All right, welcome to our second ever art team AMA and live draw. Here we have Geersart already on the screen, creating a brand new original piece. And with us also is Nina. So, welcome again, Nina and Gears.
Woohoo!
Uh,
Hello.
Thanks everybody
Yay!
for joining us. A couple of familiar faces in the audience. Do share this with your friends if you like as well, because this art is, the best we have to offer at the moment while we're still building our games and other experiences. This is a good opportunity for the community to come in, ask some questions. We have a few, questions interview style that we're going to get through first, but do please leave yours in the Breaker Canteen chat right here or in the AMA chat channel. And toward the end of the show, we'll make sure we address the ones that we can. We can't spill the beans on everything, but of course, we're free to get opinions and takes from our lovely art team here. So we did a session this morning as well with Jonas and Davide. Did a live draw of a webcomic scene. We identified a young Jolie in a flashback sort of scenario, but there was a sort of mysterious character there with Jolie. So that was really cool. You can see that time lapse and entire conversation on youtube.com/duskbreakers. We uploaded the VOD there already, and we will be recording this session as well for everyone to check out later if you miss any part of the show here. So don't worry about if you have to hop off or anything like that. But we'll be here for around, the next hour, hour and a half, chatting as Gears creates this. But first, we'll start off with just some introductions. um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm Joshi, former community lead here at DuskBreakers, now marketing manager and de facto host for all AMAs and streams. Nina, welcome to the stream
Yep.
again. You were here this morning, and we're happy to have you again. Let's go ahead and have you introduce yourself for the new crowd.
Okay, so I'm 3D technical artist in this meta theory and art team. And yeah, I'm working for any kinds of 3D things, and then like delivering game assets to the game engine. Yeah, and I think I don't really I don't think I really need to introduce myself because I already did it this morning. So I want Gears introducing him more
We'll
himself.
we'll give Gear
Mm-hmm.
some time too, of course.
All
So
right.
yeah, so just in case anyone wasn't here or didn't hear earlier, it's good to have that frame of reference. So thanks again for joining
Mm-hmm.
us. And Gears, yeah, please take it away. Let us know more about yourself.
Hey, I am Gears. You can call me Geersart or Gears, doesn't matter. I was one of the founding members of Meta Theory back in the day, so been here since the beginning. Kev, JT, and Dave. Started out as art director, and just recently pivoted to more of a lead artist role because I missed the whole creation process as opposed to sort of the managerial and direction process. So um, I like sort of being down in the trenches more a little bit. And tonight I'm gonna be drawing a character that was picked. I thought it would be fun to draw a breaker that was chosen by one of the co-founders, and this one happens to be one of Dave's mom's favorites. So she put up a brief little dossier right here. You can kind of see, um, and I'm going to be going off of that as sort of like the background for the character, which is one of the interesting things about Web3 is that the people that hold it or own it can sort of dictate, what that character's background and lore is supposed to be. So working off of that, and then this is sort of the only visual representation that we have of her at the moment. And then yeah, so that's tonight's plan anyway.
Cool. Can you tell us a little bit more about your previous experience and career?
Yeah, I was previously at Twitch for about 6 years as illustrator on the creative team. So a lot of the original box arts, shirt designs, a lot of the illustrations for events, stuff like that is fell under what I did. Previously, I worked. I don't know if we have any Twitch users here, but I watched a lot of Twitch before that and did a lot of freelance work for some of the larger streamers like Lyric and Co Carnage and so yeah, I did a lot of freelance work before that.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know what else.
So just Twitch. No, that's cool. No, of course, you were obviously a staple there and it makes sense. Obviously, Kevin Lin is our CEO here at Metatheory and DuskBreakers, and obviously had the heavy involvement with Twitch, and as well as JT Gleason, and actually a fair few others have some work experience from there. So, yeah, glad to have you along for the ride on this game and art comic series. Everything that we're producing here has a bit of Gears in it. Obviously, creating that first Breakers collection and the huge variety of traits and looks involved there all have a little bit of Gears flair. Some of it clearly inspired from other places, like different hairstyles and jackets and things like that. Do you have anything to say about your inspirations for that Breaker collection?
So that Breaker collection was sort of fly by the seat of the pants type projects. We didn't really have a backstory or lore or anything back then. It was more of a what can we draw that was cool, that drew references from other IPs that a lot of people were fans of, things like that, just to get it started and kind of set the tone for the universe. And the lore and the story world building, I guess, is something that we've been building on relatively recently. It was I don't know. This one thing that I'm finding about Web3 is that a lot of the processes seem backwards, almost. Where it's like traditionally you would set up the world building first, spend a lot of time doing that before any of the visuals even came to life. With Web3 and our project, it feels like it started almost backwards, where it was, draw a bunch of cool pictures, then we'll build off of that. And it worked sometimes, it worked didn't work sometimes, but a lot of the references that you see that you might recognize from other IPs were direct homages of, from sources of inspiration that the leadership team and I had going in. So
Nice. And yeah, I think people can make some of the more obvious connections, like the Prince hairstyle and things like that, Canada jackets, etc. So it was really cool, of course, during the reveal of the collection to see if you got something that resonated, with you personally. If you'd seen the anime or were a fan of, whatever traits you happened to open. So that was
yeah.
that's cool. Yeah, having a bit of familiarity and new things blended is good stuff. And of course, we're a lot of anime and sci-fi fans here. I see Tavius is typing, and I would actually, because Gears is going to be drawing quite a lot. This morning we had David Barthwell originally scheduled for this session, so that we had some more people to speak with, but. Tavius, if you want to actually hop up here, we can talk about lore as well, so that we can free up Gears just a bit to actually illustrate more. I'm going to invite you up regardless. Up to you if you want to join us here. But yeah, more the merrier. We had Jonas and David, as well as Davide, full house this morning, so we'll have some more to chat about. But Nina, again, since not everyone here heard the first session, I'll ask what is something specific that you've worked on here at DuskBreakers that you're particularly proud of?
Yeah. So, should I say something exactly same thing
You,
or?
you can you can say the same piece because I have the art ready to show them.
Yeah. All right. So one of the work that I did in the meta theory and the most impressive thing was that I built the only concept of the Kinshasa elevator, which is the greatest elevator in the Machafuku, the our city. It is the elevator, uh, that make connection between the city and the dusk, and I mean, as you guys know, the dusk is itself is a kind of alien ship, but it's something like it's also a stage of the user who playing the Twilight Shift as well. So it's very honored to make something very important thing of this word. Yeah, and yeah, that's the most impressive work that I did in here.
Awesome. And
Mm-hmm.
Tavius says he will chat. He's got about 20 minutes. So, Tavius, I think I did invite to speak. I'm not sure how that shows up on your side, but we could talk more about the lift also.
Yeah.
um,
I mean, in terms of the lift, actually, I mean, who comes with that idea? It was quite interesting. Like I never thought something like connect the elevator between the alien and the city.
Yeah, it's difficult to concept something like that. That doesn't
Mm-hmm.
actually exist in the real world. I know that
Right.
there's essentially a station at the top that is
Mm-hmm.
part of the Dusk. But if Tavius is able to join us, he can explain better than I can. But um,
Yeah. So I can
go
chime in
ahead.
on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The concept of a space elevator is relatively common in sci-fi. So like a lot of the more established, even Star Wars and Halo, have their own versions of space elevators. That's just not central to the story, in the same way that they are in DuskBreakers. So when you think about a concept of a space elevator, all it traditionally does is reduces the cost of sending things into orbit or into outer space, essentially. Um, with ours, we wanted to make it a little bit more important as a means of um, like transportation, getting away from sort of that whole trope of zero gravity and levitation and floaty objects and stuff like that, being something that humans can achieve. Because if you incorporate that into the story right away, that solves a lot of the Earth's problems, and it leaves very little room for building on high stakes situations. Because at the end of the day, if you have the ability to have zero gravity, it's like you have the ability to basically solve all of Earth's energy issues and production issues, things like that. So, um, and then the addition to the space elevator in DuskBreakers was something that was formulated pretty early on. It's just the implementation of it was a little bit um, ambiguous, I guess, at the very beginning. So that was I'll let lore team talk about like the ins and outs of the technical details, but
I did see a Gundam a Gundam series actually had space elevators, and their scientific use of this technology was uh, they essentially had 20 or so of these giant lifts to space, and they were used to
mm-hmm.
operate solar panels, as you were saying, energy, so that they could have more coverage for actual solar energy above the Earth's atmosphere. They figured they would be able to better power the planet, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, as natural resources kind of dried up. So, very interesting to think that, multiple concepts have reached the same conclusion of
Mm-hmm.
we got to go to space. Uh, interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Gears, obviously, you uh, were the main creator of the first collection, the Breakers. What other part of DuskBreakers so far did you have a significant hand in? I want to say the webcomic, obviously.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like the looking back at it now, it was sort of all over the place at the very beginning because not having a world to build off of, we had to go sort of off gut based on just images that appeared. Um, so I would say like the outside of the original PFPs and the original Breaker series, I guess, um, the majority of say like the creature design and the vehicle design, even some of the buildings, before we had help from like Nina and our other art team, um, was just dictated by whatever I came up with at the at the moment. And we didn't really have a team to process or go through a process to like pick revisions, things like that. So like a lot of the illustrations that you'll see have some inconsistencies into style because we're still searching for that, and like we still are to an extent. So like the artwork on the website, like that hero splash image that has all the breakers and the creatures and all that stuff. Um, the Some of the work that we did for marketing, so like the original POAP, that's just basically an egg in sort of like a medallion shape.
Mm-hmm.
The creature designs, like the original Gribble, um, the little breaker that you play going through the simulator, the training simulator, all of that sort of design was just kind of come up with without a whole lot of revisions. So we're trying to
Yeah, I
change
like
that
to call
process
it.
a little bit.
Hi, Tavius.
Hello, yeah, my God, I could finally hit the button to accept your invite.
Well, there you go. Welcome. This is Tavius from the lore team. You want to introduce yourself just a little bit further? What you do here?
Yes, hi, I'm Tavius Marshall, co-head writer, lore guy. You've also probably heard my voice as the Corrupted, if as the Blue Corrupted, if you've heard any of that. I have formerly done lots of stage art and tech and multimedia writing, and have been here for about a year and 8 months, I guess, since the early days, since before we were doing DuskBreakers, and Dave was pitching a ship and the elevator and all of the early stuff, and Gears had some pictures. So, yeah.
Excellent. So now that we do have you here, good question for you is how does the lore team and the art team actually work together? This way we can give Gears a bit of time to actually draw. You can explain a little bit about the process. We could pick a specific example, maybe something like the alien Asha that a lot of our community are fans of.
Dear Asha, I love Asha. Yeah, Asha, one of Adrian's close pets and friend. Yeah, so during that process for it, we were talking about Adrian and the Shadow District, and we were trying to deal with some other creatures there from the Dusk and show some of the variety of the wonderful, wonderful Dusk and the lots of life we have there. So Gears started working on some ideas for a sort of plant-esque creature we talked about, and he came up with the beautiful, beautiful thing that is Asha, and we got to then lore design basically on a retro script of the way things fit in the Dusk and the way the alien story works, which some we can get into and some not. And we fit all of that stuff in, and we came up with the beautiful creature there.
So when it comes to something like we discussed the Mama Gribble actually earlier today because Eunice had a lot to say about it. So do you feel like is lore informing art more, or is art informing lore on what they're capable of doing? Are the limitations difficult?
I would say that it well, in the beginning we didn't know which process we wanted to set up, but I would say now we're in a really good, caring relationship with the ideas, and we feel like we know more what we're doing and where the world is. So now we'll pass them an idea, then they give us some images, and then we start to spawn off of that, and then they grow, and it's a very passing it back and forth sort of mutual relationship.
That's great. And Nina, you feel the same way?
Yeah, but I think the most basic concept is mostly decided by the role team, and without those kind of basic concept, it's actually really hard to find the visual reference from our team. So it is basically very collaborative work between the lore team and our team. So yeah, their all explanation for the concepts are very helpful when you're trying to find out the reference, and it's actually really interesting work when you do having a meeting with and then talking about some new creatures that we didn't even know. And yeah, those kind of works are very creative work, I think.
Yeah, there's the great mix between we'll send them creatures that they have no idea about, or somebody will just send us this drawing, and we're like, oh well, we can do something with that. It's great.
Excellent. So we are. I just want to reiterate for the audience, we're open to questions from all of you as well, and we did actually have just a couple of questions listed in AMA chat, but feel free to leave some new ones. One question from this morning's session that perhaps Gears can speak to more is, how is the art Bible going? It's kind of a vague question, but we discussed the art Bible just a little bit about themes and colors for each area. Gears, did you have much hand in creating that sort of art Bible?
Yeah, the initial process or the initial art Bible concept I had some hand in, but the current one is pretty much a large collection from other IPs, so it's not necessarily artwork that we've done. It's just the direction that say Jonas wants to go in terms of established IPs, and then we can build off of that with our own flair, I guess. So the art Bible itself is coming together. It's just not a ton of final work from us because we don't have a whole lot of time final work, if that makes sense. When we get to that point, then we'll probably rebuild it and build it based off of the work that we have. But yeah, it's coming along. It's just a process.
Awesome. Speaking of, just finished works and things like that, we discussed a bit in the earlier session about sometimes we've pivoted away from things. We haven't released a ton of concept art, honestly, just because we're not always satisfied or we don't always end up building the things that we create. By your estimate, Gears, how much art have we actually concepted and then not actually used? Is it a ton or?
The majority of work that our team has been doing hasn't been seen by the public eye, which is either a good or a bad thing. I would say like a lot of the concepts and the stuff that we have for, say, the game side, I don't think like we showed the Mama Gribble this morning. We showed, actually I don't even know if we've shown any of the level design concept or like any of the city building, or world building.
Nothing this year yet.
No, like the only thing that we've shown from, I guess, released is the corrupted drone and like maybe the blast or like the omni tool, the tool that the breakers use to
The adept, we named it the adept, right?
the adept. Yeah, so not much. Like there's a lot of work that's being done. It's just people haven't seen a whole lot of it. And hopefully we can resolve that.
Well, you said maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing. From marketing perspective, I always want more to post, but yeah, it is.
Oh yeah, I mean, if I'd love to just have a stream of consciousness going out to the world, but that also leads to some issues with, attachment and
right, and then not delivering, and then your expectations don't match.
Right. Yeah.
What is
building
actually
expectations
possible.
for the community, and then we deliver something completely different to throw people off.
So that's.
Well,
go ahead, Tavius.
Yeah. I mean, from our side, it's even always the funny things about like when you guys talk to us about joining these sort of things is like I have a Wikipedia full of information that I can't say right now, right?
Yeah.
Like we have a lot of story that people haven't seen, but I'm excited for people to see. But we've been building a lot.
Mm-hmm. So we've shown tip of the iceberg stuff. Really, as the game is our primary focus and has been since December 2021 when we launched that first collection. So the fact that it's still under development, tons of things have changed, even just technology wise in that span, some that we've taken advantage of and are still looking into to create better products. So I just like to again temper the community that we want to share more, obviously, but there are other concerns with things like that. So we're very happy to have something like this event going on with a live draw where this concept art, it's from scratch. There's no further expectation really attached. It's something that we can do for the community that it won't hopefully build too much expectation or anything like that, but still very cool to see the process. And Davide's webcomic sketch this morning was really cool as well, and I'm already noticing some style differences, some actual mechanics based on the way you guys both illustrate. So I think I'll ask the artists here, Nina, are you ever required or do you ever feel obligated to try to match the other artists' styles, and is that difficult?
Well, actually, my job is a 3D job, so it's like there's not much style goes on when you do the 3D modeling, because most of the 3D modeling is something when you create something realistic things. So, but when you create a character, it's really actually hard to match the style between the different artists, but the very precise art direction from the art director and the art bible that we have internally, it helps a lot to to keep the consistency between the art style, and we keep communicating to each other to match and then to have some connection between the art style, and that helps a lot when you worked together, I guess.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
uh, it makes sense that 3D to 2D
Yeah, right.
is a bit different, and
Mhm.
you don't actually work closely with the game team in Taipei because they are in Taipei and you're based in
Right.
USA. So that makes sense. But the consistency, the note about consistency is good there. That we are
Mhm.
all working from the same pool of requirements and themes and things like that. So Gears, how about you? Since we have had a couple of different hands in the webcomic and 2D space, do you find it difficult, or do you even care that you should try to match the other style closely?
It's a mix. So the initial style was set just based off of my artwork. So we're trying to pivot a little bit into something um, where Dave and Jonas have agreed, like, we want to go a little bit more towards sort of the painterly look, um, like a la Arcane, things like that. So if we can get to that point, um, I'm happy with whatever direction. It's just adapting isn't something we can do really until we have something firmly set in place. And with my art style, it's like if it's fairly flexible. Like if you go to my Instagram or whatever um, gallery that I have up, you'll see that it varies a lot. Like I have one day I'll be doing like a fluid painty thing, and then and then the next day I'll be doing like a very hard line drawing, from
How
cartoony to realistic and things like that. So
how would you describe this piece that you're working on right now?
this is a sketch. So
Just a sketch.
when I start doing the line work, it should clear up a little bit. But right now, what I'm doing in the process is just establishing a um, uh, why am I having a mind fart right
Frame
now?
of reference.
No, I'm composition.
Ah,
That's the
yeah.
word I'm looking for. So I'm just throwing in sketches. I have a general idea of where I want to go with it. So this character's background, she's very tech savvy, and spends a lot of her time and money upgrading her tech. So I'm using that as sort of um, the background for the piece. So she's in her own little private workshop, I guess, holding bits and pieces of technology, whatever that may be, whether it's pieces of her suit. Instead of having her wearing her suit in the piece, I have it hanging up in the background, so it looks like she's kind of like in a mechanic shop almost working on it, upgrading it and doing things like that. And then um, the other parts of her lore you can incorporate into the background. This is all sort of the scene building skill where that comes in. Is say she has a lot of brothers and sisters, or she's firstborn girl in a family of 6 boys. So if you wanted to establish that, you can have it in the background on some of the workbench. Say she has like pictures hanging up, sort of like you would do on a fridge magnet. Maybe it shows all 6 of her brothers, or like maybe things of her childhood, stuff like that. Um, so you have a lot of character building inside one illustration. It's just how you put it together in the composition is fairly important. Um,
Cool.
Outside of just like the foundational art stuff, where don't crop in certain places, don't make things too heavy on one side versus the other, stuff like that. But
Awesome. Good answer. I'm taking a look back at the document here. Tavius, thank you again for joining us. He's got to head off to another meeting, so we appreciate the insight there from the lore team. And actually, we are working on some future events involving Tavius and more members of the lore team to come answer some story questions. Jasmine specifically, you've asked quite a lot. So the artists looked at the questions and they were like, "We draw the stuff, this this isn't potentially all for them, but we do still have your questions loaded and ready for a couple of weeks from now. I think we'll be able to do an AMA with the lore team next week. Actually, we have quite a few of our team headed to the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco, so we will not have likely a live event for the next week, maybe 2, because we'll have a lot to go over once everyone is back at home from GDC. So just something to keep in mind for the future. Gears, would you mind describing or explaining the size of the art team here at Meta Theory?
that is a good question.
Wow.
So our art team is sort of, it fluctuates a lot. So the initial starting point, I'll just go from the beginning. How about
Sure.
that?
Yeah.
So the initial starting
Yeah.
point was me, and that was the art team, right? So A lot of the art that was coming out had some input from Dave. Some of the concept, the core writers and stuff, at the very beginning had some input on what things would look like. But as we grew, we started hiring in additional illustrators, additional concept artists. Hired in Nina, 3D Technical, and so it's been sort of putting together a puzzle without really knowing what the image looks like. So no frame of reference as to what an art team is supposed to look like, and the resources that we have in terms of hiring is fairly limited to what's available online. We don't have access to, say, like when a game company breaks off from a larger game company, oftentimes they'll pull a lot of people in from that original team.
Mm-hmm.
So they have that sort of they're already in sync when they start the project. With us, it's like we need to sort of build all the pieces in first, and then get people used to working with each other. So it's sort of a double whammy in terms of efficiency and how things get produced. Right now we have Brian, who's in Hong Kong. He's very young but extremely talented concept artist, and so he's been working a lot with like Jonas and the game team from the very beginning. Then we have Nina, obviously, who's doing a lot of the technical work and some of the 3D stuff. And early on, she helped with the architecture, designing the 3D look and feel of the Kinshasa lift. And Davide, who's a fairly recent member, is from Italy. He was originally signed on to be a comic artist, so like a web comic artist. But as priorities shift, as they do, he's been moved to more of sort of like a mix. So he likes doing concept work, and that fit into sort of the needs that we had. In the more near term is help with the concepts and like the character designs, things like that. So that's what he's been working on outside of just the comic. And then I'm trying to think, like Jonas, the art director, he came in with a lot of experience, knowledge. Helped a lot with like the Gribble project that we heard about this morning. And then the Taiwan team obviously is like there's a whole studio in Taiwan that's been adding. I don't know if they've added anyone recently. We've had a few leave recently, like not out of ill will or anything. It's just they've chosen different career paths or different projects. But we have a whole team over there that's been doing a lot of the I would say the bulk of like the game work, and even some of like the upcoming pieces for content that people will see hopefully pretty soon. That involves a lot of AR and mocap stuff like that. So like we have a lot of things in the works in terms of the art. It's just getting it out there to see is the process that we have to kind of overcome right now.
Yeah, and so that's a great description there. This morning we mentioned, quote, the Vision team in Taipei. So obviously they joined us about a year ago now. So they've been on the whole time essentially, building the games and stuff. So the size of that team, I want to say, is around 30 to 35 head count.
Really?
Isn't it?
I don't know.
Is it smaller? Did I overshoot?
Maybe.
Oh, well, we have Nelson actually in the chat typing something now, so
right.
we'll get that quick correction. So Nelson obviously is one of our heads over at in Taipei, overseeing a lot. Oh, eight. The entire team is 8? Oh,
Wait
wait a
We're
second.
way
Wow, I thought there were way
I was
more of
gonna
you.
say, like, our entire team is only like 60 people. I don't know.
I
if
thought like half
half
the
of them
team was, I thought half the team was in
we
Taiwan.
have like bunch of transparent workers
That's
that
true.
works in behind.
So the Vision Studio, though, they did publish a game previously, and this year it actually got quite a lot of releases on consoles and things, and that is The Legend of Tian Ding. And I'll just link, this is a trailer from a couple of years ago, but this is a game that they actually fully published and released, and you can play it on multiple different platforms now. Jenny left to pursue her dream as a dive instructor. That's actually really cool. So thank you, Nelson, for that extra uh, context there. And someone from our people team has messaged me now. Okay, so including Taiwan, our art team is 17, including Nelson, Isan, Ferrum. So maybe 14 artists if you remove more of the leads and leadership. And our global team is about 55 total at the moment. So that's context for everybody. Thank you for clearing that up. I thought there were more of you. Everyone keeps going to Taiwan. I want to go and meet everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I saw people like visiting Taipei team, and then like also they have like very nice meals and then snacks in there. We'll go
That's what
there
you're
too,
ready for the
right?
snacks. Yeah.
Ready to the bubble teas.
That's the reason you want to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I need
right.
to renew my passport. Actually, thinking about it right now. So Jasmine asks
Yeah.
in the chat there, she linked one of our more recent art pieces. Gears, if you can see that, it's the
It's
lobby. This is sort of how I'll
Yeah.
describe it.
That's sort of the lobby reception area concept for the Lindaway space station. So the station that connects Earth to the Dusk, essentially.
And who worked on that piece, that art piece?
That was a piece by Brian, our concept artist based in Hong Kong. The thing is, with a lot of these early concept arts that we do release, just going back to the people building conceptions or expectations based on the artwork that they see, as sort of like one-to-one. The station as it appears in our IP, official in the official capacity, will probably be vastly different than what you see in things like this. So just put that expectation aside for a little bit, and just enjoy the beautiful artwork, because there's a lot of things that we do include in DuskBreakers that we try to adhere to in terms of sort of the scientific realism or hard science fiction. So the station design is sort of dictated on what's possible and what's achievable with not far future, but future alien influenced technology, but still ultimately human. So we don't want anything that breaks the laws of physics so blatantly. And then we also have to think about like limitations in terms of game design and like what we can build and engine, things like that. So
Absolutely. So a piece of concept art like this, you can see all kinds of things in it. I'm going to expand it here just for the recording, but there's trolley cars and people and Dusk Tech logo, bulletin boards. There's like a little atrium with some appears to be plant life, and these are all things that could change drastically. So even from maybe these trolleys turn into hover vehicles, or the Dusk Tech bulletin board ends up becoming a hologram somewhere, or the atrium thing disappears completely. So go ahead.
Yeah, going back to that, like the concept of hover vehicles and holograms, they work to a certain extent, but they're more leaning towards sort of like the Star Wars fantasy side of sci-fi. So hover vehicles in our case would be just because it's a microgravity environment, like the vehicles aren't adhered to gravity essentially. So you can have things going in all sorts of directions. Holograms are more complicated than what a lot of people think. Like you have volumetric displays, but for holograms, there needs to be a surface for that image to be projected onto or into. And doing that oftentimes leads to a lot of questions as to why.
Yeah, it's cheaper to use an LED, right? Just use a TV.
Yeah. So like having a lot of floating images and like transparent LEDs, things like that, you get the same effect. It's just more practical.
Absolutely. And I could tear apart the Star Wars bases in Andor, for example, or Obi-Wan, that just drove me insane with
Yeah, Star Wars is one of those IPs where they can just do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and then
the long time ago.
The fan base and followers will create the lore for them and like justify like why things are certain ways.
Yeah, why blasters and not bullets? And are we paying by the laser? Is one of my favorite.
And, like, why are the blasters so slow?
Yeah, that's I believe it's the Family Guy Star Wars special. They say, "Are we paying by the laser? Like, what? Why don't we just blast everything?" Oh man, but that's another topic we could, I'm sure, talk about a long time, with Mandalorian actually coming back as well with its new season. And of course, I am a fan. I've got like a little Mando bobblehead here next to me on my desk. But we're all
Yeah.
just big nerds here. So now that we have creative control over our own sci-fi universe, we can be more practical, and we can actually again use our lore to inform the art. Sometimes the art can inform the lore when it comes
Yeah.
to things like that. So that's a really cool example.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, realism does not mean boring. I mean, a lot of things that we can create based off of hard science fiction are oftentimes more interesting just because of the fact that they're plausible. So like, and when it comes to designs, like creating creatures that have a little bit more so like biology background as opposed to just putting weird shapes together and calling it a creature. That's oftentimes a lot more interesting for people after the fact, and it builds a more, I guess, long-lived IP, because people have something to kind of think about and build off of. That's one thing that like James Cameron is famous for, is like creating a world that's more believable than ours is at certain times. And the way that it appears on screen is oftentimes more interesting than the actual story and the characters that you're supposed to be paying attention to. So,
Gotcha. Solomon asks, has anyone read Red Shirts by John Scalzi? Pretty classic take on Star Trek tropes. I have not personally. My parents watched Star Trek, but I never never got into it quite the same. I am familiar, though, of course, with a lot of the classic cliches, I guess. Yeah, tropes, as you say. I always found tropes to be such an odd word. It's just a made-up word. Cliches is the word. Nina, this morning we talked quite a bit. We had David Barthwell on, Chief Design Officer, who was scheduled to be here for this session, but since we had less time for you this morning, was there anything from this morning's session that you did not get a chance to share, or anything that you thought was interesting at DuskBreakers specifically that maybe you haven't encountered before, that you would like to share with our community about your work?
So, as far as I know, this is the first art AMA, right?
Right.
So, like, I thought it would be a good chance to talk about like our first collection NFT, but we just had the chatting about it,
Mm-hmm.
and then it'll be also good for like sharing like little drawing tips by the artist. Like,
Sure.
I mean, we actually didn't really have a chance to talk about like what exactly tools that the Davide using, or like a technique that he used when he did the live drawing show, and that might be helpful to people who are interested in something that technical skills about the artist. So I want Gears to talk about like his drawing that doing right now.
Well,
So like,
I'll ask first, Nina.
mhm.
Do you know what Davide was using this morning? What programs?
That was my big question actually.
Because yeah, you're right actually that we did not really touch on
Yeah.
art for
So-
artists.
he was using Clip Studio, which is what I'm using right now.
Really?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So personally, when I drew something, like when I drew the little concept art for our team, I only used the Photoshop, which is very traditional and very typical tool. But like when the Davide just turned on the screen, and then I was like, what is that? And
Yeah.
is this Clip Studio too?
Yep, this is Clip Studio as well.
Oh.
It's more of a standalone. Like if you're specializing in painting, drawing, animation, or comics, like it's a better program, in my opinion, just because it's more geared specifically towards those formats. Photoshop is sort of the jack of all trades, where it has a bazillion different features and filters and
Right.
actions that you can go through, and it sort of overcomplicates the whole I just want to draw something process. It's still a program that I use on a regular basis. It's just like the drawing portion of the creative side of things is more efficient, and I think feels a little bit better actually, with like the brush use and stuff on Clip Studio. So that's the only
Oh.
reason I use it for drawing a lot.
So they have more option for the brush preset.
Not necessarily more options, but they have like the drawing tools themselves. Like you'll notice on the hard edge brushes in Photoshop, there's something called anti-aliasing, and they
Mm-hmm.
do that to the max almost, where you draw a straight line and then the edges will be so blurred, or if you turn that off completely, it'll look like a MS
Mm-hmm.
Paint line. Clip Studio has a, a,
Mm-hmm.
a better, I guess, edge blend when it comes to the edge of the brush and the
Mm-hmm.
canvas. So this is what I'm talking about. Like you see the little blurry
Right, right,
pixels on the
right.
edge. That creates sort of a sense of illusion that it's a smooth edge as opposed to a bunch of pixels attached. So you don't get that
Mm-hmm.
staircasing effect. What Photoshop does is that it brings it out almost like 1 or 2 pixels further.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to draw a hard edge line, um, it's much easier, I guess, and less frustrating in Clip Studio than it is in Photoshop.
Oh, I see.
Because at the
Well,
end of the day, it always
uh-huh.
ends up looking blurry in Photoshop for some reason. So,
Oh, that's a huge difference actually when you do the like line sketching of things.
hmm
Cool.
I
Nina,
see.
what
Mm-hmm.
programs you said Photoshop, but you certainly
Mm-hmm.
don't use just Photoshop for 3D modeling, do you?
Right. Like, who can ever do the 3D modeling with the Photoshop?
Yeah.
So, if I just explain just a little process for 3D work, we're using Maya by Autodesk as like the huge 3D modeling tool. I think I'm not sure this Type A team has a gibberish or not, but since I don't know gibberish copyright, so I'm just using Blender, which is the free tool, and like that has a lot of different features in its side. I mean, it's an open source software, but itself has really huge features. You can do the sculpting, you can do the modeling, you can do the animation and rendering, everything that you can do. So yeah, if I have something to render, I'm using Blender too. And we also have the license for Substance Search, which I guess Davide mentioned. I mean, no, Johannes mentioned it about it in this morning session already. You remember the like how we created the Grievel things.
Hmm.
We created the Grievel model with the procedure modeling, and that is done by the Substance Designer, which is node-based software. And I'm also using that software if I need to make some shader for the games.
Cool. So
Mm-hmm.
I've got just very limited experience with both Photoshop and Unity and
Mm-hmm.
Blender. VR chat is actually my limited experience making a couple of small models and just as I describe it, gluing items to their hands like a sword or a
Mm-hmm.
shield or something like that because that's all I had the technical skill for. So
You are already 3D modeler then.
yeah, it's there's a lot of tutorials and good
Right.
websites where you can just upload the files and then they're like, okay, you've uploaded this model, it meets our requirements, so now you can essentially download this dance and this
Mm-hmm.
animation. And it was
Mm-hmm.
actually I I I think I only spent a couple of days before I had a model and a couple of animations that I liked, and I just could port it right into VR chat, and that was I think 2018. So it's only
Mm-hmm.
gotten simpler since then. Really cool stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we did talk about the Gribbles and the generative art this morning, as you mentioned. Gears was not here for that. Gears did mention on this session, though, that we look at things that exist in the real world when informing our art. So the Gribbles specifically, I know that the lore team and the art team both spent a lot of time and research on all sorts of actual insects and arachnids and sea creatures and all sorts of things. Gears, can you talk about a little bit of the research or things you've learned when the Gribbles were being developed?
yeah, that was actually chosen. So I think the initial drawing for the Gribbles in the original um, trainer game. So like you had the virtual reality trainer essentially that was created specifically for the purpose of combating bots um, when minting the first set.
The first
So
game you're talking about, the Breaker Recruit Simulator, I think is what we
yeah,
called it. Yeah.
the simulation. So like those were designed, I think man, I'm trying to think of like the um the history of it all. If it was Dave that I think Dave brought up Gribbles as I think they're originally wood lice or like a wood some sort of wood mite that
Mhm.
was found in a lot of like the old ships built out of wood. Um, and those are actually an actual creature that exists, and they're I think they're man. I'm trying to think of the Wikipedia article.
That's actually
Um,
really interesting to think about the Dusk as a intergalactic ship that's just got mites
yeah.
in the woodwork.
So the design of the original Gribbles were based off of that little wood mite.
Oh.
um, so a lot of the little features and like the segmented body and the armor pieces and it was all based off of that. And then it turned into something completely different. Whereas we're trying to make it a little bit more alien. The design philosophy for some of the creature design changed from that initial. So instead of just taking an animal and turning it into an alien, we want to be a little bit more intentional.
For sure.
But yeah.
I see the photo peddler Eric from our team asked, "What kind of physical tablet do you draw with?" Wacom.
Yes, I have. Well, I'm a boomer, so I prefer a lot of redundancy when it comes to equipment. So I have multiple tablets. So the one I'm drawing on right now is a Cintiq Pro 22-inch. It's a 4K display. It was one released like 3 or 4 years ago, maybe. Um, and then the previous tablet I have as a backup is a Wacom QHD 27, which is a 2K display. And then I also have a Hoyan uh, Pro 16, I believe it's called. That's a 4K travel, like a portable display that just connects with a USB. That's super convenient and really beautiful, and it works really well. It's just a little bit small, so.
Do you draw a lot while traveling?
Yeah, every once in a while I'll go visit family in like say Michigan, or if I go travel to Taiwan or anywhere. Bringing a laptop and a tablet is sort of crucial, I guess.
Yeah.
Like you can't get anything done these days without it. Um, so yeah, like I previous years I used an iPad, which is actually really really convenient and nice. Um, and I highly recommend if you're getting into art, like an iPad is a good solution because most people already have one. And some of the programs are just like sort of standalone where you can buy it and not have to worry about like perpetual license or subscription fees, stuff like that. But and the Apple Pencil is surprisingly good. It's just some of the limitations in terms of file size and storage, um, and like file transfer you'll come across if you're working with a lot of other people and different programs. So
Cool. And Nina, do you also do any mobile artwork? Do you have any hardware like that?
So I also like to bring my tablet and then go out and then drawing some stuff. I'm using the Galaxy Tab, the most recent one. Well, actually, I got this as a my birthday gift from my friends.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's actually really convenient. Like I never had this kind of tablet before. Well, I just got this on the last year, and I was like, oh, I can just bring my sketchbook to anywhere. I don't need any, visitor or electric or stuff. And once I got this, and then I cannot live without it. It's so convenient. You can always check your data. You can also change the brush types that you cannot even choose in when you're drawing just with the classic sketchbooks. So yeah, it's really good tool.
Excellent. Hopefully, Eric is taking notes and looking into some products for himself. Thanks for sharing, he says. All right.
yeah. Wacom does make a standalone travel tablet, which is like a computer built into their tablet, but its specs are very, very outdated, so I wouldn't suggest getting that. If you're spending $4,000 on a tablet PC, you expect it to at least keep up with computer specs for the next couple of years, but they're already several years behind. So.
All right. And he says he's used it for photo editing, but he's no illustrator. And yeah, that's obviously a huge difference, but useful for both is good. Okay, so running low on discussion topics, to be honest. So again, audience, feel free to toss any questions in there. Gears, we did budget for about 2 hours. We could, end this stream in the next 10 or 15 minutes and have you just continue to draw and post the time lapse later, if we'd like. But for now, I'll just ask something that we did ask in the morning session, which is, since we're on the topic of technology, AI is the big, elephant in the room
AI.
when it
Yeah.
comes to arts and original content. So since you are here creating an original piece for us from scratch, what is your take on the AI wave, so to speak, coming in?
So I have mixed opinions on AI. So as an artist, there's a lot of, I don't want to say it hasn't become politicized really, but there's a lot of divide in terms of
Right.
opinions when it comes to art and AI specifically. Like ChatGPT is a completely different animal. Maybe built on the same foundation, but it's different moral arguments, I guess you could say, in the way that it's trained. So a lot of the issue that some artists have based on discussions that I've been reading and everything online is that open source AI programs will oftentimes sample images that have like from a pool of images that hasn't been vetted really in terms of like copyright and things like that. And some of the images that it outputs are strikingly similar to the original image or contain actual elements from the original image. So like the famous lawsuit going on right now is the Shutterstock one, where the AI image has a deformed Shutterstock logo in the bottom right corner. So if that's the type of generation that it does, it's not truly original, and that raises a lot of questions when it comes to sort of like the ethics and when it comes to ownership. So AI in its current state, I'm not a huge fan of, just because one, it isn't necessarily, in my opinion, all too visually appealing with the output. When it comes to sort of like the animation, it all sort of looks the same. It's got that weird jiggly artifacting, blurry line look, and it's very at the moment anyway. It's very easily distinguishable as AI, just because they all just sort of look the same. And I guess it depends on the images that you're feeding it. But when it comes to future uses of AI, I'm kind of optimistic, just because what Dave was mentioning earlier is that AI used as a tool and as a force multiplier for small studios and small art teams, like that has unlimited potential when it comes to sort of creating original work. So if you use established imagery from a studio, say like if our art team, a combination of Brian, Davide, Jonas, Nina, and myself, like if we all pool our collective works together that we've done for DuskBreakers so far and feed it into this AI algorithm, it'll spit out something that is based off of work that we own and that we have, sort of established so far. Any modifications to that after the fact, I don't know, this is sort of a different topic of discussion, but if we use that as sort of a starting point, so like instead of me spending, an hour and a half or like more like 30 minutes doing the sketch for this piece, if we were to say like, okay, we'll input, I need a character sitting at a workbench inside of like a sort of like a grungy workshop with armor hanging in the background. She's, holding whatever. And if it output, 6 or 8 variations of a concept, that would give me a lot more time to do what I'm doing now, is putting the finishing touches on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's exactly where my brain goes as someone who's not a skilled artist. If I were to, have an input like that, again, breaker, machine shop, hanging armor, and then if the output is 10 or 20 images, maybe even I can just click 5 or 6 of those, narrow it down, run it again, and then you can actually refine outputs that way. It's not something that I think will be commercially viable, as you mentioned, like fingers and blurs and weird, it's very easily distinguishable as AI. Trying to sell it as copyrighted material is, of course, out of the question. But when it comes to saving time or even translating, just words to image. That's really where I'm more of a wordsmith than a than an artist. So
No, exactly.
yeah.
But the growth is exponential, so like it's only a matter of a few short, like very, very short amount of time right now where it'll be indistinguishable from a traditionally drawn or, like a human drawn piece of artwork. Um, and that's just the reality of it. And that's this, whether like what your opinions are, those are your opinions. But as an industry, like as an art form, um, art is always going to be like a human thing where people do art just because they have that creative expression, they want to do it.
There's
But as an industry, it's going to be, adapt or die type of situation where,
there's
when
intrinsic
Photoshop came
value
along.
with
Yeah.
with a hand drawn piece, and one argument could be made that hand-drawn pieces will become more scarce and therefore more valuable. So
Right.
it's actually great long term, but I don't know. Obviously, we're gonna have to see how things shake out. But just from technological standpoint, the one thing that AI really will save is time, and that is a resource that is not renewable. Time is money, friend. That's the goblin saying from World of Warcraft, but it's true. It's things like YouTube thumbnails, won't take hours to create. You can templatize or have dozens of iterations quickly. Even just small tasks that you save minutes or hours in a week or a month will add up and allow artists who are capable of using AI the opportunity to create more original work potentially. So I think
Yeah, in an idealized world for sure, but
right.
reality has often proven that people will go for sort of like the more dubious uses when it comes to that. Where and one of the I think one of the justified concerns for a lot of artists is that AI in its current state, and as fast as as it's growing essentially, is removing too quickly a lot of the sort of smaller format contract jobs or anything like that, stuff like that, for a lot of the artists that are trying to become, say, game developers or like create illustrations for YouTube thumbnails. If say like just use Mr. Beast as an example, like say he hires a lot of people for his content team right now, but if it was easy enough where you could just like output 1 million thumbnails for his YouTube videos, that's like 2 or 3 jobs.
Right.
If you think about it in that sense, that
You're
won't
absolutely
exist
right.
anymore. But that's been the case for every sort of like technological advancement.
Exactly. And easy counter, or not counter, but I mean example is music, right? So we went from the 50s and 60s where the only way you could really appreciate live music like Elvis or the Beatles, those live concerts are the moneymaker. They're the best, most authentic way to actually hear music. And then radio says, hey, you can listen actually just for the price of some sponsored ads. You can now hear the Beatles and Elvis whenever you want, or tune in specifically to our sponsored hour where we're playing Elvis and Beatles. So that technology shift has progressed obviously through the decades into what we have today, which is digital distribution, worldwide launches all at the same time. Like anyone can record, remix, adapt, re-release, and that is now, it's hitting as a wave for original and digital art. So there is precedent. There are winners and losers in all those industries, especially music, when you've got now producers or button pushers that essentially are replicating what would take a 20-person band to actually create in the past. So it is very interesting. And winners and losers. That's all. Basically it's going to boil down to, and that's the same for video games as well. It's not just art that AI is capable of producing quickly. You got things like dialogue and music, all sorts of things. So just it's my prerogative, my advice to stay on top of it. Don't shrug it off or ignore it, because you can get left behind quickly.
Right.
Nina, do you have any further thoughts or takes on what we've talked about here?
Well, I actually have exactly same opinion like yours. You remember there was a huge copyright. I don't know. There was like huge controversial debates happens on the art station. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of artists posted the image that says no AI images. It's because a lot of art image like AI image generated generators using other artists illustration to create to gather some money, and it's all about the copyright issue, and always technology comes first, and then the law and then regulations are behind. And I think we just need more communication with each other's, like we have to think about the morality, and then we have to think about the rights and the copyright things. If that's in right way, in the proper way, I think AI can be a good tool and a nice tool.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
that's also, we're working in Web3, crypto, blockchain, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned just the laws and regulations need to catch up, and that's true of our entire industry. So uh, you're actually,
Yeah.
absolutely right on that.
Yeah, I mean, like whatever we are using, like the technology should go behind it. People should go come first, isn't it?
Protections,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that's something I did study in college as well as in advertising and PR, marketing, all that stuff. You do learn a lot about copyright law, libel. What counts as fair use, things like that when it comes to creating advertisements. Even something as simple as like a YouTube video where someone's reacting to another video. There is a line somewhere, where it's fair use, where if you're transforming the content or not, stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's on us to stay current with those laws and protections, as well as um, try to make the best use of the emerging technology for our own benefit and time saving, so that we can release cool games and better products and less manpower overall to get it to you. Sorry for any, again, this is like the winners and losers things. Like some jobs won't be necessary that may have been necessary a couple of years ago
Mm-hmm.
in game dev, but that allows a startup like us to, save and
Mm-hmm.
have higher
Yeah.
output per person.
No, going about it in sort of an empathetic way is, I think, important, just so we don't lose that. Like that's one thing that AI hasn't been able to replicate so far is human empathy. Doing it in a way that's not so destructive, as opposed to something more transition oriented, is something that's achievable. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It can be
Right.
a transition, just like how, I mean, the way that the speed in which it's developing, I think, is one of the more concerning points. And if we can maintain some of that humanity in how it's done, I think it'll be extremely valuable. Which is ironic, considering the message that sort of we're establishing with DuskBreakers. Um, there's a message, there's like a lesson to be told. Uh,
The lore team will
in
tell us more.
yeah, there's a lesson to be told in how we handle and utilize technology, um, whether for good or bad.
Cool. Well, I think that was a good, thorough discussion on that, and I see a new question in from Jasmine, so we'll leave that topic where it lays for now and move on. But Nina and Gears, are you drawing anything just for fun? Do you have time to? So Nina, we'll ask you first.
Do we have time to? Yes, of course. We don't work like 24 hours and 7 days. So, yeah, I mean, when we work, we also draw something, but when we drawing something for work, we have to fill out our brain with a lot of different thinking, and then we have to think about what character looks like, and then we have to think about the direction from the art director. We also have to think about the like any kinds of details from the lore team. So it's like a mixture of a lot of thinking goes on when you draw, like drawing. But I need a moment to draw something without any thinking in my brain. It's like,
Freeform.
it's like meditating.
Yeah.
yeah, just drawing for fun without thinking, without any kind of limitation. And that's makes you, that can be refresh you, and then that can, be new inspiration yourself, and then they can also motivate yourself to ready for to work.
Yeah. Gears, same question.
Not really. Like,
Not
like
really.
This is fun.
lately, I mean, so drawing is just one of those things that I do regardless.
Hmm.
And I guess the last example of drawing something for fun was actually based off of something for work. So
I
it was
see.
I was trying to kill two birds with one stone, and it's one of those things where I wish I had a lot more, because if I'm going to start a side project for
Hmm.
fun,
Hmm.
it'll take up way too much time
Right.
from the work that I
Right.
actually have to do. So
DuskBreakers is also your baby. Like this is the fun stuff, right?
Hmm.
This is the
yeah,
your spotlight.
I mean it's supposed to be. um,
Yeah.
there are days where I get pretty frustrated, and just to be honest, but like
That's normal.
the overall creation of an IP and something is something that I've always dreamed about. So um, yeah, all my energy and time has been sort of devoted trying to get that off the ground. Um, Eventually, I hope to have more time to kind of work on my own stuff, and just go back to doing art for the art sake of art. Um, but I'm content with what I'm doing at the moment. So
That's good. I see Ayers, longtime community member here, just typed something up here. He says, I'm guessing Gears works as an artist because he likes to draw. Having an AI who cuts up part of his work, is it a bad thing or a good thing, though? Yeah, and we touched on it a bit. Copyright and lifting art is really the crux of the issue, because
yeah,
if AI could do it without sample pools, I think there would be less, um, offensive morality
Hmm.
questions going on. But
yeah, or if those the sample pools were submitted, voluntarily,
right,
or like
or for
vetted before
profit
they were
even.
submitted.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. That is one thing that would, I think, alleviate a lot of the sort of arguments for a lot of the artists, is that their work being used wouldn't be an issue if they were being compensated for the fact that it was being used. But um, and that'll be a question that comes up later on, I think, when it comes to sort of the copyright issues, is that
Mhm.
all of these apps and so or that are using the open source to create monetized versions of AI, um, that's going to be a big question mark going forward. It's like, well, what right do they have to use this stuff? That's,
Yeah.
I guess it's open source, but at the end of the day, if you're monetizing it, you're assuming a lot of things. So
I'm gonna give a sort of alternate perspective that I don't think many people think about, but it's kind of close to me as someone who did thousands of YouTube videos. I have something like 22 million views over the past decade plus, and I have never drawn anything, right? So it's like every piece of content I've ever made was based on someone else's art. That's typically StarCraft, Overwatch, just commentating esports. Like I'm literally making a profit off of someone's gameplay. I'm not even playing the game myself in those instances where I'm just like talking over other creations. And then there's things even like if I did a tournament commentary on YouTube and then someone on Facebook lifted it for their like cool StarCraft videos page or something like that, that's straight up theft. Facebook doesn't care. Like no one on Facebook cares. But
Hmm.
what argument do I have to stand on where it's like, oh, half this all created content in the video isn't even mine. It's just my voice and selective editing. So copyright is always digital age has always been kind of a crazy wild west, and now obviously it is affecting a lot more people when every layman can just type in a prompt and grab from a source pool of bajillions of images, whether permission was given or not. And in the case of my video games, Blizzard with StarCraft 2, they have community licenses. They have, a reason to allow me to use their content. It's because it acts almost as a marketing vehicle or something like that. But yeah, just another perspective I thought I'd offer up. I always uh, think about it when I read, the Twitter discourse about it, and I'm like, am I a thief? Like, do people hate me because I'm not an original person? Um,
well, in the case of like say YouTube thumbnails or images used in YouTube videos, like when I did a lot more of the freelance stuff, I would get constant messages of creators asking permission to include images that I've done in the past
Mm-hmm.
in their videos, and I think that's seeking permission. That's a good way to go about it for YouTube content, like what you were saying, and even platforms like Twitch. Like
Right.
that was a big gamble because that was based on the sole um, opinion of, I guess, like the user base that these companies, these game developers and everything wouldn't take legal action because you're sitting there streaming their video game
They wouldn't
on a
dare.
platform. Right. Like, in considering it as like a marketing vehicle, I think is what kind of saved that. AI art does not have that luxury at the moment
Correct.
where it's like, artists are looking at their work being lifted as theft. They're not looking at it as like, oh, this is great marketing because this this
It's not
pool of images that I
supplemental.
had. Right, there's
Yeah.
a pool of a million images that it contains a lot of my artwork, and I've actually found a lot of my images in shoot, what was that? There's a website where you can go and look and see if your work's been lifted
Oh.
or used in the
Oh,
pool.
really?
Yeah, and I've actually found a lot of my work in that, and it's not something that you can go and sit there
Delete,
and
yeah.
file DMCA claims for every single thing that comes in. It's just you have to sort of accept it and be like, man, this kind of sucks because it's like I would have probably volunteered a lot of my work in this if they would have just come forward and been like, hey, can we use but
Right.
Yeah.
progress sort of trumped, I don't want to say ethics, but good process in that sense.
Nina, anything else to add there?
Well, it comes like if someone asks me, "Hey, I'm working on to make something AI simulator and generator. May I use your picture?" Then I'll say yes. Why not? If you just post my name on your tool, and then I mean, artists are not that closed people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, if they ask us, and then if if they pay something that we require or that is something right,
Attribution or credit,
we don't
yeah.
yeah, we don't hesitate to use our art in there. But like none of the AI image generator does that, isn't it?
You're right.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen that video of Hayao Miyazaki
Mm-hmm.
talking to a team of AI.
Mm-hmm.
This is very, very early on in the stages, but
Mm-hmm.
they were at a table and they were talking back and forth. And Hayao Miyazaki is, the founder and basically the godfather of Japanese animation
Right, right, right.
at this point, Studio Ghibli. But like he's got sort of like that old school mentality where it's blood, sweat, and tears. Full creative control. Humans are the human touch is what makes art great. That type of thing. And he was discussing with these people on the development team what they were doing and then why. And he's asking all these questions, and the look of heartbreak on the AI generated AI teams when they see that their hero Hayao Miyazaki thinks what they're doing is essentially the work of the devil was pretty was pretty telling.
Mm-hmm.
Where they didn't think about what artists were considering, or like how artists that that they admired would feel. They were more excited about the technological advancements, and when they finally presented it to one of their idols, and the reaction that he had, you could tell that they were just sort of like, "Uh-oh."
Yeah, I know that clip you're talking
Yeah.
about. He's very
Yeah.
stone-faced, sitting on the one side of the table, and he's like, "So you propose to replace artists with this?" And they're like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And he's like, "This is terrible. This is
Yeah.
this is the
It's
worst."
like the end of humanity, essentially.
Oh man.
Like a
Which is,
matrix.
I mean, it's not an unfounded concern.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it's done irresponsibly, like AI could have detrimental effects more than
Mm.
beneficial. But
Right. And Airs, we did actually, I'm not sure if you just came in the last 15 or so minutes, but we actually did talk about this for a good clip, and including the questions you're asking there. But we are recording all this. I'll upload it as I did the morning session. So if you are interested, we can definitely scrub back and see what they had to say about the time saving. Basically we covered kind of all bases on that. So if there's any other questions, I think we're about an hour and 20 minutes in. I think no, that's no problem, Ayers. I think we are pretty nearing the end of this session, and we'll allow Gears to finish the piece on his own time here, and we'll be able to post the time lapse of the created piece later on. But yeah, I think for the actual community AMA art team session here, if anyone has any final questions, we'll field a couple of more, but we'll go ahead and start gearing down here. Gearing. Haha.
Gearsing down.
Do you want to Gears? Do you want to just describe like what you've done here on this piece in the last hour here?
Yeah, so I figured I'd just do some coloring or some value work on the character and leave the background for later. But essentially, what it is this character named Angelique Brown, who is based on breaker number 4450, sitting in her workshop working on her suit. So like she has a breaker suit. And that's what you can see. She's got the lower half on partially, but the back, you can see the top portion of her suit. This portion is hanging up in the background. And one thing I forgot to add is the little orb. But yeah, just trying to get some of her personality across, getting some elements from world building, things like that. And this is more of an illustration as opposed to concept, because I didn't really think about the ramifications of adding certain things in design when it comes to, can we incorporate it in other aspects of our IP, or can we incorporate this in the game, stuff like that. So none of that is like, not thinking about that doesn't make it concept art. I think it's more of just like an illustration.
Gotcha.
And then the composition should be fairly straightforward, and you can see it visually. So
yeah, looks pretty cool to me. The cyber legs are a choice, right? Because we don't know what any breaker's legs look like, really.
yeah, this would be more of
Right.
like just when you're gearing up for football, you put on your leg pads, you put on your shoulder pads, stuff like that. Like putting on a breaker suit would probably be more complicated than that, but for this piece, I just broke it down as something fairly simple.
Cool. All right. I think we'll just go ahead and get any closing remarks. I see Ethan in the chat says, cool stream. Thanks for the insight in what you're doing. Looking forward to seeing where DuskBreakers goes. Well, we're glad to have you, and we will be doing more AMAs with the team in the next few weeks. A lot of the team is going to GDC in San Francisco, Game Developers Conference, next week, but the week after that, or the week after that, we may be back here with the lore team up next to ask them all of Jasmine's questions. So any final remarks? And Nina, anything you want to share with the community before we head off for the evening?
I mean, it was really good chance to share my thought to the community, and yeah, I hope we can have this kind of art side, I mean, AMA or driving show more, so that we can, communicate with the community.
And we're very
And
grateful to
yeah,
have you.
thank you for coming, guys. Anyway, as spending time to listen our story is very, precious and appreciated.
Jasmine sneaking in a question there. How's the 3D version of Asha coming along?
3D version of Asha. Well, if I have a chance, I want to make, but right now we don't have plan for that. But yeah, I'll ask to it.
I will say there's a lot of cool 3D things in development. Nothing specific we can mention right now, but 3D is definitely something that, like the Gribble collection, for example, you can download any of the Gribbles in 3D and play around with it in various programs, and we want to continue to expand on those. And obviously 3D breakers were mentioned a long time ago, and they haven't vanished from from our site. So still lots being developed, and 3D work takes a lot of time and effort and fixing and iterations, especially when you're kind of building from scratch, like our breaker collection. Making them 3D animated, all that stuff is goals of ours. So nothing specific to announce on that, but Gears, any final words for the audience here and anyone watching on the VOD later on?
Nothing profound. Just thanks for hanging out. We'll probably do this again pretty soon. I was actually talking with some of the leadership about doing a normal live stream just on Twitch. Nothing official or anything like that. Just something more of a hangout and draw and just chat. So keep an eye out for updates on that.
Great. And yeah, the more the community is into it and requests and shares and all that, we've got some time to fill before our next leaderboards or anything like that for video games. So as everything is still being developed, artwork is something that's kind of a primary part of our product. So very glad to have Davide this morning and now Gears sharing their talents with everybody. It's not a required thing, so very happy that everyone's willing to do this and interact. Davide had a great experience. He said it was the first time doing something like this, drawing in front of more than just a couple of friends. So he's probably interested in going again as well. So stick around, everybody in the audience. Hang out on Discord. Say your good mornings every day, and we'll be here to chat with you as well. So I appreciate Jasmine, Ethan, Ayers, our staff as well, our team members who came in and listened in to everything. I hope somebody learned something and got some more perspective. So we will again be back with more team members to pick their brains in a couple of weeks. GDC next week, we'll be posting a lot of probably photos and interesting panels and things like that on Twitter and discussing in Discord as well if you're interested in that sort of thing. So thanks again to Nina and Gears and Tavius earlier. We had Davide, Jonas, and David Barthwell as well in the morning session. These VODs are all going to be on youtube.com/DuskBreakers, and Gears will finish the piece on his own time. We'll update the socials with the time lapse from this as well. So have a great rest of your day, morning, noon, or night, and we'll be in touch on Discord and Twitter. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.